My brother married the woman I planned to propose to. Our parents knew. The wedding was at our lake house, so I took $486,000 and walked away. I was scrolling through Facebook on a slow Thursday morning when the first photo appeared. A lakeside vista, rows of white seats, string lights strung between birch trees, and more. A dance floor, a tiered cake, people laughing over wine, and, right in the middle of one photo, my brother Ryan in a tuxedo, smiling with a woman in a white dress. I paused and refreshed the screen. More photographs kept loading. Ryan and Claire had a beautiful day. Someone had captioned it. I blinked. My thumb hung over the screen, frozen. I wasn't invited, but everyone else in the family was. Aunt Karen is carrying an awful silver clutch. My maternal cousins, including one who resides in Oregon. Uncle Tom's ugly fishing hat is still noticeable even in formal attire. They were all packed into shot after shot, like a great happy reunion that I had no idea had transpired until now. My name is Evan. I'm 34 years old and my own family appears to be unaware of my existence. I proceeded down the rabbit hole. Nearly 180 guests had been tagged. My parents appeared radiant. Mom is wearing a forest green outfit. She constantly claimed she was saving for something significant. Dad wore that too tight smile he saves for formal occasions and to conceal worry. Claire's family looked happy as they posed near a lakeside arch. Then came the bridal party shot. 5 guys and 6 bridesmaids. No me. There was no call. No save the date and not even a vague group text with a time and location that I could have easily ignored. It was not a mistake. They had not forgotten. I had been completely excluded, purposefully and ruthlessly. I sat there, heart pumping in my ears while the comments came in. Best day ever. I cannot believe how gorgeous that was. I am delighted to rejoice with you all. I locked my phone. I unlocked it again after 45 seconds. Still there. Still real. I went back to check my texts. Ryan says nothing. Not for weeks. He sent his last communication in April. A meme about a classic game we used to play as children. It did not even receive a reply. Then one from Dad in June. Just a bland happy birthday, mate. There is no mention of any upcoming weddings. No invitation, no hint. I had not yet met Claire. I had no idea what she looked like until that moment. Mid-scroll, stomach drop. I didn't know her name. I did not call. I did not text. I did not write a comment. I did not hit like. 5 days later, I received a note from Dad. Your brother is heartbroken. You did not reach out. I stared at it for a time. We are sorry you were not invited. Let's not just explain that. As if I had disappointed them by not pretending. I didn't realize the entire family was celebrating anything without me. It's as if I owed them something. I did not respond. I could not. Not yet. I just sat there, feeling the weight of it, wondering when precisely I had been cut out and why no one had the courage to tell me. It is not as if Ryan and I were strangers. We grew up like many brothers. We had arguments on occasion, played video games together and switched tasks when we believed we could get away with it. We drifted a little after college. Sure. He went into corporate finance. I started freelancing as a web developer and doing contract work. We didn't see each other every week, but we shared birthday greetings, attended family gatherings, and had drinks when we were in the same city. We sat together at the funeral for our cousin Daniel, who died earlier last year. He even crashed on my couch once when his work trip was prolonged. It wasn't ideal, but it wasn't terrible. Nothing to imply this, but I'm guessing it didn't start with the wedding. It simply became evident. Looking back, there were fissures. Like when I came home for Thanksgiving 3 years ago and Ryan told me he was thinking about proposing. He had been imprecise, saying he was still figuring out the timing. Mom had effectively silenced him in mid-sentence. I assumed it was because it was too early to disclose, rather than because they intended to make it a family affair with one exception, or because I offered to host Christmas at my home last summer. Everyone mentioned they were keeping things small, and travel was difficult this year. But then I noticed the photographs on Mom's Instagram. Ryan's place was lit up like a Hallmark movie. They sat around a fireplace in matching jammies. Each of those times stung it aside. Life gets busier. People create plans. Miscommunications occur. That's what I've told myself till now. Little, but I shook. Until 180 people assembled at a lakeside site, and nobody believed I merited a seat. I began to reflect deeper, recalling small incidents that didn't seem significant at the time, such as how Dad always seemed to play peacekeeper but never genuinely took my side. Or how Mom would compliment Ryan's job promotions as if he were receiving gold stars. but never inquired about my work unless it was to urge I try something more stable. And birthdays. Oh, birthdays. Ryan got surprise parties and handmade cakes. I received texts and occasionally a regifted bottle of wine. At the time I just laughed it off. He's the golden child. I joke with my friends. I'm just an extra. But when the extra doesn't show up, they're devastated. I wish I could say that I was astonished. But I was not. Not really. Not in my gut. I guess a part of me already knew. The wedding simply ripped the curtain down. And now I needed to decide what to do with it. Whether I should pretend it never happened, respond to Dad's message in a kind and forgiving manner, or stop pretending. I didn't respond. Not that day. Not the day after either. But I started paying attention, replaying events, observing how people spoke to me, recalling who showed up when I moved residences last year, who returned my calls, and who asked how I was doing without attempting to change me. Because if my absence from the wedding had caused them so much grief, why hadn't my absence from their planning done the same? That question kept buzzing in my mind. Every time I opened my phone, saw another photo, or scrolled past the cheerful faces of folks I used to consider family, I noticed something else. There was one photo, which I had never seen before, posted by a mutual friend, not a family. It was a group shot taken behind the groom and bride, just off center, standing casually with a drink in hand. My ex smiled as if she belonged there. I tapped and expanded the photo. There she was, Olivia. I dated this girl for approximately 2.5 years. She broke up with me 16 months ago because she needed space and was not ready for something serious. There she was, wearing a pale blue bridesmaid's dress, clutching her waist, laughing with someone I didn't recognize, and my brother stood by her, hand on her lower back, smiling. The timeline snapped together. I believe that's when everything changed. Not the wedding, not the words, not the images, but that single image, tucked away as an afterthought. Everything stopped being perplexing and began to make cruel, perfect sense. I did not blow up. I did not anger. I just stared. The silence that followed was not hollow. It was the start of something. It's strange how stillness can feel more intense than screaming. When I saw that photo, I didn't slam the phone or hurl it across the room like you would in a dramatic breakup scenario. I just sat there quite still. There was no music or TV on in the background. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the ancient ceiling fan above me. My intellect was not racing, it was organizing, not worrying, and sorting. Olivia, my brother, had a wedding to which I was not invited. A heartbroken text arrived 5 days later. The longer I gazed at the photograph, the clearer it got. Ryan's hand rested so securely on the small of her back. The proximity, her smile. Not the polite sort you throw around at gatherings, but the genuine one I used to earn after inside jokes and late-night trips in the stupid way I'd sing in the car. That was my smile. I remember it since I used to pursue it. Now it was in his wedding photos. And no one told me. Not her, not him, nor my parents. You have to understand that Olivia was not just random ex. She was in my life for over 2.5 years. I brought the first girl home to meet my folks. The first person I had ever truly considered a future with. She and I had a rough relationship in the end. Sure, but we hadn't ended on animosity, only distance. She claimed to be exhausted and in need of time to reflect. The breakup was quiet, sorrowful, and filled with loose ends. She cried. I cried. We pledged to stay on good terms, maybe even reunite someday when things made more sense. Apparently she understood things far faster than I did. I scrolled on, fingers numb and eyes unfocused. Another photograph, this time from the rehearsal dinner. Olivia sat next to Ryan, her hand on the table, and they both laughed with my mother. My mother's smile was beaming as if she had just won the lottery. I had no idea they knew each other so well. Ryan had met her at family gatherings before, but never in an intimate setting. He'd never asked about her and didn't seem really interested. I used to tell him about our friendship, just like you would with a brother. I confided in him when we were squabbling, when I was arranging our anniversary trip, and when I considered proposing. He constantly had a calm demeanor, as if he didn't care. They said relationships were complicated and I shouldn't rush things. Looking back, those discussions feel like landmines that I stepped on unknowingly. There were no photographs from their first date. There is no time frame to show when everything switched. Just this, the surprise. Completely formed. As if I had missed the entire film and only got the last 10 minutes. I did not sleep that night. I lay on the couch. The light from my phone screen dimmed yet remained on, fueling the storm in my belly. I dismissed every interaction between them that I could recall. Every time I thought she stayed in conversation with Ryan for too long, it played out in a terrible loop. I felt like an idiot, and much worse than that. I felt cheated. The next morning I called my best friend Chris. On the fourth ring, he replied with the same half-asleep voice he uses when I wake him too early. "Are you up?" I asked. "Now I am." "What up? Did you see the wedding photographs?" "Yes, man." I was about to say something, then realized, "Wait, you weren't there?" I paused. "No, Chris, I wasn't invited." There was stillness. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" I've explained everything. The Facebook scroll, the text from my father, the photo, Olivia. His reaction ranged between stunned and enraged. He questioned, "Did they knock their heads or something? How can you not invite your own brother to your wedding, especially since you are marrying his ex?" I didn't have an answer, but as I thought about it, I realized how deep this went. This was not a mistake, it was not an awkward oversight. It was planned, coordinated, and safeguarded. I spent the following few days replaying it in my memory. I remembered having a talk with my mother last Christmas about Ryan's maturity this year and how love can arise in the most unexpected places. I assumed she was talking about his settling down in general, but it's more likely she was referring to Olivia. They were already together back then. I began to spiral. Not in a dramatic, "I'm losing my mind" sense. More of a cold surgical unwinding. I contacted our cousin Lauren, the only family member who had ever been slightly impartial in our never-ending familial favoritism circus. She responded while jogging, her breath coming in bursts. "Hello, Evan, is everything okay? Mayor, did you attend the wedding?" Her quiet said everything. "I only need to know one thing," I said in a tense voice. "How long had they been together?" She paused. "Look, I didn't know the entire story. I thought maybe you did. I mean, it has been a while, correct? Since you and Olivia." I didn't respond. "They started showing up for family events together about 7 months ago. Your mother pretended it was completely normal, as if it had your blessing or something." "My blessing?" "I didn't know, Evan. I swear I assumed someone would have. This is really messed up." I ended the call gently. I can't recall much after that. Just a sense that the room had slanted sideways and gravity was off. That day I did not eat, work, or shower. I simply gazed. I wanted to shout. I wanted to rip the place apart. But all I could do was sit there, transfixed by a fact that everyone else knew but me. Nobody thought I deserved to know the truth. Not even Ryan or Olivia. Not even my parents. The betrayal wasn't simply because they were together. It was something my entire family knew. They had grinned, posed for photographs, and toasted champagne flutes under fairy lights. All the while, I sat in my apartment, fully oblivious, hoping to see everyone again next vacation. Maybe this year they'll come to me for Thanksgiving. Maybe I'd finally be enough for Mom to brag about to her family. But I didn't even get a seat at the table. The breaking point came 9 days later, when Ryan finally phoned me. The name appeared on my computer like it hadn't in months. I glanced at it for 4 rings before responding. "Hello," I said. His voice seemed overly pleasant. "Evan. Hey guy. I've been meaning to call. Sorry about the delay. Honeymoon planning has been chaotic." I did not say anything. "You doing well?" he asked. "Dad claimed you were distant. Is this what he said?" A heartbeat. "Yeah. Listen, I know you saw the wedding details. I'm so sorry, guy. We weren't sure how." "What should be done?" I interrupted. "How to inform your brother you're marrying the woman he adores." He became quiet. I waited. "It's just happened," he said eventually. "We ran into each other after you guys parted ways and there was a connection. We didn't intend for it to be serious, but it was." "How long, Evan? How long?" He exhaled. "Approximately 11 months. I nodded despite his inability to see me. Approximately 11 months. So, they'd been together while I was still hopeful that Olivia and I could reconcile. While I was sending those awkward texts and grieving the end of the relationship, they were already forming a new one behind my back, under the smiling gaze of my family. And they hadn't simply hidden it. They had celebrated it. "You didn't invite me," I said. "Not even as a guest. You did not even warn me. You just acted as if I didn't exist." "We didn't want to hurt you," he added quietly. "So why did you do it?" "I do not know." That was the truth. He probably didn't know. He only wanted what he wanted, and I was inconvenient. "I've always had your back," I responded, my voice trembling. When you were dismissed, I paid your rent. I assisted you in rewriting your resume after you failed at your first job. When you crashed my automobile, I did not ask you to pay for it, and this is how you repay me. Please, Evan, I didn't intend for it to happen like this. I do not care what you meant. I care what you did. He began to say something else, but I hung up. I sat there for a long time afterward, the air heavy with betrayal. I was no longer just mourning a romance. I was mourning a family, a sense of belonging that I'd clung to like a fool. A lifetime of playing the role of the dependable son, the underappreciated sibling, the one who always maintained order. That guy was gone. I did not anger, I did not send a long email, I didn't make a dramatic call out online, but I did start writing something else, a plan. Rock bottom does not always mean flashing lights and sirens. Sometimes it appears quietly, like a weight you didn't notice until it began to crush your lungs. For me, it was a Tuesday afternoon. I was just walking into the grocery store down the street to get eggs and bread when I saw Mom. She was in the produce section, holding a head of lettuce and laughing at what the woman next to her said. I froze. My stomach clenched. Not from anger, but from something worse. Shame. I did not want her to see me. I didn't want to hear whatever lies she had concocted to soothe her conscience. I didn't want her fake warmth or her eyes acting as if none of this had happened. So I turned around and walked out, leaving my basket behind, got into my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my hands. That was the moment. That's when it really hit home. I couldn't even be in the same room as my mother without feeling emotionally impacted. I went home, turned off the phone, and vanished. For weeks I operated on autopilot. I handled fewer client calls. I missed deadlines. I declined the invitations. There weren't very many. Chris attempted to check in, but I kept our conversations short. I was tired of everything. Of pretending that I was not broken. I resisted the urge to text Olivia and scrolled past more wedding photos every time I opened Instagram. My apartment became a jumble of pizza boxes, laundry piles, and unopened mail. The only constant was the dull, quiet ache that lived in my chest. However, the world did not come to a halt simply because I felt it should. Rent was due. Bills required payment. And somewhere behind the ruins of my dignity, I still had clients. So I showed up gently and silently. I took on a few modest assignments, including web updates, redesigns, and WordPress themes for boutique firms. The task did not make me feel better, but it did help the hours pass faster. Then something changed. One afternoon I received an email from a contractor I used to work with some years ago. Jason Cole was a tech startup founder with a crazy beard and a penchant for coffee that tasted like charred tree bark. He required someone to develop the back end of his company's new app. I remember your work, he wrote. Are you still available? I nearly said no. I almost erased the email, but something inside me clicked. It was the first time in weeks that someone treated me as if I were more than simply a rejected brother or ex-boyfriend. I replied back, we set up a call, and I was back in. The project was intense. 4 months, tight deadlines, and complicated architecture, yet I pushed myself into it. It was not about money. It was not even about distraction. It was all about control. When I couldn't fix my own family, I started over and built something new. I worked late at night, often until 2:30 a.m. My apartment remained a disaster. But my code was clear, sharp and tight, right in the middle of all that. I remembered who I was. I was not Ryan's shadow. I wasn't the backup son. I was not the one who was left out. I was Evan, the guy who created websites for local bands in high school, began freelancing in college, and managed his own one-man studio for 7 years. I had clients from 3 nations. I'd helped launch 3 businesses from scratch. I wasn't simply floating. I was undervalued. And the knowledge hit hard. One night in mid-fall, I went for a walk around the lake near my flat. It was late, the air was crisp, and the sky was full of stars. I did not bring my phone. I did not listen to music. I just walked. For the first time in months I felt still, not pleased or healed, but as if I wasn't going to shatter. Every time someone discussed family, weddings, or betrayal, I would breathe. That was sufficient. However, something else was also shifting. I started looking through my images. Not the wedding ones. My travels, my work, my friends, and the recollections that were unrelated to Ryan, Olivia, or my parents. I discovered an old photo of me at a coding boot camp I helped run 3 years ago, smiling and confidently teaching things to a bunch of excited college students. That person was still inside. So I tried something I hadn't done in a long time. I revamped my website. Not merely a portfolio, brand, or platform. I cleaned up my customer list, updated my testimonials, and included new case studies. I hired a designer friend to redesign my logo. I even made a blog post about building when you're burned out. It was not poetic, it was not viral, but it was genuine, and people responded. Emails came in. Bookings result in a minor increase in site traffic. Then a direct message from someone at a mid-size creative agency. They were looking for part-time contractors and liked my voice. A month later, I signed a retainer agreement with them. And with that, I was no longer just surviving. I started building again. My daily existence changed as well. I began getting up early, not out of stress, but on purpose. I made coffee, opened the windows, and brought light into my cave-like living room. I purchased a plant. It perished. I purchased another one. It did not. Small wins. I reconnected with Chris. I started saying yes to things again. Dinners, game nights, and even a hiking excursion were activities I would have shunned previously. Therapy followed next. Not because I broke down, but because I didn't want to do it again. I found a man named Dr. Andrew Collins. Quiet, sharp, and did not use excessive force. During our first appointment, I told him, "I think I lost my family." He nodded. We unpacked carefully. The favoritism, the quiet, the treachery, the way I always felt like I had to earn affection, whilst Ryan simply accepted it. I shrunk myself to avoid being a burden, and I clung to crumbs of affection like they were food. Dr. Andrew Collins did not do miracles, but he did listen. And for the first time, someone confirmed that maybe I wasn't crazy, that perhaps the pain I had borne since childhood wasn't just bad luck. It was a pattern, which might be broken. Meanwhile, my parents remained mute. No word from Mom. No apologies or explanations. I heard from Lauren once. She texted me stating she hoped everything was fine. Ryan and Olivia had moved into a new place and Mom was attempting to make things right. I didn't say anything, not because I was angry, but because I was done filling quiet with forgiveness. One night, Chris and I were having cocktails when he asked, "So what's next? Are you just chopping them off forever?" I did not have a response. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. Not in the way I expected. I didn't intend to burn bridges, write angry letters, or post call-outs online. I did not need them to grovel. I simply wanted to stop bleeding. And I did, slowly and silently, but I was paying attention. Because revenge isn't always about fire and fury. Sometimes it's about clarity, waiting for the appropriate moment, not out of spite, but with precision. And when it arrived, I'd know because something in me had changed. I wasn't the extra anymore. I was not the one who was left behind. I was the one who got up anyway. It started with a quick email. Hello Evan. Long time no talk. From a name I hadn't thought of in years. Taylor Brooks. We'd been to college together. Same dorm, same computer science group. She was brilliant and keen, with a biting sense of humor and a laugh that could cut through any terrible day. We lost touch after college when she moved out west to work for a tech company in Seattle. But she appeared in my email like a ghost, knocking pleasantly. Subject line, fast query, and perhaps an opportunity. I opened it. She was launching a large venture-backed platform that was still in its early stages. A hybrid between a creative freelancing hub and an AI-powered resource planner. She wrote, "We're building tools for the next wave of remote creatives. I need someone I can trust to lead development on the infrastructure side." Your name appeared more than once. It seemed weird, as if the universe was delivering something I hadn't asked for yet really needed. That night I connected with her via Zoom. She appeared older, but in a good way, more focused and forceful. We caught up quickly, discussing specifications, timeframes, and team dynamics. The deal was not only lucrative, it was strategic, with great visibility, substantial equity, and long-term promise. She did not only want me to lay the foundation, she wanted me to be a member of the core. I agreed before we even hung up, and with that, I had a new engine. For the first few weeks I was completely overwhelmed with work. But it wasn't the desperate drowning I did after the wedding to avoid my feelings. This was planned and structured. I participated in team calls, sprint planning meetings, and GitHub threads. I was developing clean code and assisting juniors in debugging their reasoning, working late hours to create scalable systems that mattered. I was not simply rebuilding my life. I was developing someone else's vision. I was valuable. That's when the idea of not vengeance began to grow. Not at first, just curiosity. You see, when you are burned by individuals you trusted, who make you feel invisible, the sorrow does not stop there. It starts there. Then you start to think, How long has this been going on? What did I miss? What else are they hiding? You should cease presuming good intentions. You start digging. After a particularly long sprint review, I poured a glass of wine, sat down at my desk and opened an old Google Drive folder that I hadn't looked at in almost a year. It was called Family Docs, and it contained just receipts, bills, joint agreements, and other items from when I used to assist Dad with tech issues or manage the family vacation rental properties web listings for free. He appointed me as administrator of the shared Google account we'd used to keep everything organized a long time ago. Apparently, he never removed me. I wasn't looking for anything special, but as I clicked through, the shape of things began to shift. There were spreadsheets, annual taxes, invoices, and maintenance records. One property was branded Lakeside. I opened it. That's when I realized the wedding didn't take place at a posh resort or Airbnb. It had been at our family's lake house, which we used to visit every summer. I hadn't been there in about 3 years because of a plumbing issue, and no one seemed to use it anymore, but clearly someone had. The spreadsheet corroborated this. There were transactions for furniture rentals, food and security that occurred only a few weeks before the wedding. Expenses paid from a joint family account. My name was still on the account. I helped put it up when Dad became swamped with taxes and they used it without asking or notifying me. They'd held a $38,500 wedding on land I officially co-owned, with my name on the books, and they hadn't even sent me a text. That's when the setup started. Not out of spite, but to clarify. Step 1 was simple. Make sure everything was clean on my end. I backed up all documents, spreadsheets, invoices, and calendar invites over the last 7 years. I logged the IP addresses. I downloaded PDF copies. I kept a version history of every change I made to whatever I had access to. I wanted proof, not necessarily for court, but for me. Step 2. Contact my lawyer. I hadn't spoken to Rachel Stone in a while. She was a straight-talking old school buddy of the family. She helped me establish up my LLC when I initially started freelancing. I scheduled a session on the pretense of wanting to resolve some property ownership difficulties. When we got on the phone, I described everything except the emotional turmoil. Just the facts: shared account, property, and unauthorized use. She whistled. "Evan, this isn't good for them. Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet," I replied. "But I do want to know what my options are." We spent an hour discussing logistics. It turns out that my parents had never properly removed me from any of the ownership documents. Technically, the lake house remained in a family trust, with my name as one of the beneficiaries. That means I had every right to seek documents, prevent repeat instances, and even request an audit. It also meant that the $38,500 wedding required my permission for any substantial renovations or rentals. They hadn't received it. Step 3. Acquire allies. This was not about mobilizing troops. I was not going to march through Thanksgiving dinner with printouts and accusations, but I did begin having quiet chats. For example, I invited Lauren to coffee. She appeared frightened, as if she expected me to eventually explode. Instead, I posed a simple inquiry. "How long have they kept things from me?" She groaned and told me how Mom had begun treating Olivia like a daughter-in-law even before the separation. Ryan began turning up to family functions without alerting me, claiming that I was too busy at work. Mom would tighten her lips whenever she inquired about me. "He's figuring things out," she'd say. I thanked Lauren and said, "Don't pry." Then I told her about the property, the account, and the unpaid obligation of inclusion. Her expression altered. She didn't know. And now she has. I wasn't looking to turn Lauren against them, but it was critical that someone else noticed what I saw. That this was more than simply feelings. It was about choices, repeated ones, financial and legal ones. Over the next few weeks, I continued to quietly rebuild. My position at Taylor Brooks' startup was going better than expected. We launched our beta, received coverage from 2 mid-tier tech blogs, and signed a few high-profile clients. I kept my head down and worked, but in the background the gears were turning. I sent a formal request to the family trust accountant for an audit of expenses and future plans for the lake house. Rachel Stone emphasized that there should be no accusations, only transparency. It was the type of motion that caused a ripple without creating a splash. I was exerting my presence without setting anything on fire. 9 days later, I received a call from Dad. He sounded exhausted, cautious. "Evan says he received your email. I wanted to talk." I let the silence stretch. "You know, you've always had a portion in the lake house," he said. "That has never been in question. So why was I never consulted?" He exhaled. "There wasn't time. The wedding came together quickly. 4 months of planning is not a quick process, Dad. It was complicated. No, it was convenient. You did not want to deal with me. More silence. Finally he remarked, "Look, if this is about Olivia, it's not." I lied. Because it was. Of course it was. But it was also about them. The erasing, and how they had transformed me into a ghost in my own existence. I wasn't looking for closure. I was making certain they felt the impact of my absence. "We'll talk as a family soon," Dad responded, attempting to appear reasonable. "Figure this out." "Sure," I answered. "Let me know when everyone's ready to be honest." I hung up, but I didn't wait because I wasn't just establishing a boundary. I was setting up the board. It occurred silently. No explosions, no confrontations, just a series of courteous formal notices that flipped my family's world upside down. The kind of vengeance you don't notice coming until it's halfway through your house, taking your beloved chair out the door. By late October, the leaves had begun to fall. I was 14 weeks into my new work at Taylor Brooks' startup, and we had recently executed a huge investment deal that increased my equity to the high six figures on paper. I was sleeping better, smiling more, and taking care of myself in minor mundane ways, such as cooking my own food and responding to texts from friends in a timely manner. That was when I received a notification from the trust accountant. He had concluded the audit. The numbers were worse than I had anticipated. Over the last year, the shared family property account, in which I retained legal ownership, had been used to fund $38,500 plus for the lakeside wedding, $8,750 for landscaping upgrades, $6,100 for venue cleaning and painting, $2,850 for floral design and tent rentals, $1,950 for guest parking and off-site transportation, and most notably, $16,500 for a guest dock renovation, marked for reception launch viewing. I recall Dad claiming the dock was too decayed to fix 2.5 years ago when I offered to help renovate it so I could bring a few buddies up for the summer. Now it appears to be wedding worthy. What made this even worse was that all of those transactions had been approved and paid through the trust account, which meant they were theoretically made with my money. My name appeared on the paperwork. My ownership status had not changed. They not only excluded me, but also utilized me. Rachel Stone was outraged when I showed her. She said, "You could easily take them to court right now and win." But I didn't want a courtroom. I desired closure. Real, undeniable, and permanent. So I asked her to write a formal letter. Not pushy, not dramatic, but firm. It sought complete compensation for half of all wedding-related expenses, dock renovations and unapproved upgrades, as well as an offer. I was willing to sell my half of the lake house for market value. And because I had the foresight to hire a property assessor the previous month, I knew exactly what that value was. $985,000, which meant my portion was $492,500. We mailed the letter certified, with a return receipt request, and I waited. 3 weeks later, Mom called me. She did not sound angry. She sounded hurt. When her control went, she would resort to that passive, gasping anguish. "Evan, I just received your mail. I assumed you would. This is so much money. Where are you expecting us to acquire this?" "I do not. I anticipate you to refinance, liquidate or sell the property." "Would you really sell your part of the family lake house over this?" "You already did when you utilized it without my permission." She did not speak for a moment. I could hear a tremor in her breath. Then she said, "This isn't like you." "You are correct. It's not." That was the last time I spoke with her. A week later, I received an email from a real estate attorney representing my parents and Ryan. They wished to negotiate. They offered me $190,000 as a reasonable compromise. I declined. I didn't become angry. I provided an official value, images of the trust agreement, copies of the audit, and a clear line. $492,500, or I forced the sale. They called my bluff, and I followed through. Rachel Stone filed the petition. Because of the trust arrangement, I had the ability to seek a sale in court if no buyout deal could be achieved within 3 months. They attempted to stall, claimed emotional value, and even suggested that I had already verbally given my portion. But every stalling attempt simply made matters worse. It turns out that forcing the sale of a family home makes matters extremely public. A listing appeared in February. Charming 4-bedroom waterfront property suitable for parties or full-time living. The real estate agent released glossy images of the recently painted dock, the groomed gardens, the wide-open reception area, the same location where my brother married, and the same pier where they toasted a new life that I was not invited to see. The offers arrived swiftly. By March, the home had sold for $1,010,000. After taxes and fees, I received a wire transfer for $486,000, clean, lawful, and final. A week later, I shared a simple message on Facebook. No names, no gloating, just this. It's strange how people call you dramatic for setting boundaries after years of making you feel invisible. Anyway, thank you for the doc upgrade. It received 158 likes, 21 comments, and several private notes from extended family. Most just remarked, "Wow." Or, "I had no idea." One of my cousins commented, "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. You deserved more." But the nicest message came from an unexpected source, Olivia. It appeared unexpectedly on a Wednesday night. "I've heard about the house. I did not know everything. I apologize for everything. I looked at it for a long time. Then I blocked her, not because I was furious but because she no longer deserved to be at my table." Ryan also tried calling several times. He once left a voicemail. "Evan, this situation has gotten out of hand. We didn't expect things to go this way. But that's the issue with folks who take you for granted. They never expect it to cost them anything. They interpret your quiet as agreement, your kindness as weakness, and your absence from their celebrations as a sign that you are too insignificant to matter until you charge them for the venue." Ryan and Olivia had to leave their condo and return to live with mom and dad for a bit, according to what I've heard. The selling of the lake house had a much greater impact on their finances than they had anticipated. They'd taken out loans to pay for the wedding, hoping to return the costs by renting out the lake property in the future, but that future was no longer possible. Meanwhile, I relocated and spent some of the money to purchase a stylish modest condo downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors, and a short walk to the greatest coffee in town. I continued to work with Taylor Brooks, invested in a few small firms on the side, purchased a cat, and gradually resumed dating, but I never reached out. Not to Mom, Ryan, or the others who sat on that dock toasting a new family while pretending I didn't exist, because I finally knew what they never did. Being invited is not equivalent to being included. And now they are shut out because I changed the locks.
cái nợ quyền ra cho quyền lại là mình vô cái nó bảo rồi suy nghĩ đi lên laptop cái nó bảo là yêu cầu quá nhiều của cuộc đời.
Em cứ gặp em không được là làng như vậy. Ê hay, nó bắt chụp hình nè. Sao nó bắt không được CBS nè. Phú Nguyễn lên cốt đi.
Có đó em, cái này một Nguyễn làm rồi đó.